Welcome to PsychPod. Today we're going to be talking with Professor Gianluca Campana from the University of Padua. Introduce yourself, Professor.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. So I'm professor at the Department of General Psychology at the University of Padua, and my work has to do with perception, with also the use of non-invasive brain stimulation techniques. So basically, what we want to see is which parts of the brain do what in terms of perceiving objects, processing visual information. Besides that, I teach, of course, at in my department, and I teach. The main course is psychology of perception, and what else? My research is on perception, but also on other aspects, somehow more practical. Whether, for example, the use of these non-invasive brain stimulation techniques can help in ameliorating conditions such as stuttering, for example, which is completely different, has nothing to do with perception, of course, but still can benefit of these techniques, or other conditions that are more related to perception, to visual perception, which is, for example, dyslexia. So we recently published papers on both topics, and we are still working on these topics. So this is to say that perception is my main field, but it's not the only field. Anything that has to do with the brain and also with the cognitive functions in general, it's relevant.
Tell me more maybe about your research area, including maybe a little bit about the history of these non-invasive brain stimulation techniques, how they started, how they have developed, and how they are adding to our understanding of the working of the brain.
Okay, so basically, brain stimulation techniques started, I would say, a couple of centuries ago, because people in 1-2 centuries ago started to understand, since the electrical current was developed, started to see that they could modulate brain activity. For example, in the last a couple of centuries ago, it was shown that using 2 electrodes on the head of people with at that time was called the melancholia, which was something similar to depression, slightly mild, they could improve their mood. So they start to see that it was possible actually to modulate brain activity and brain functions. But the modern era of brain stimulation techniques, I think, started in 1985, when it was possible for the first time to elicit the movement of a hand without any will, by stimulating the motor cortex, the motor representation of the hand area. So that was the very first time that transcranial magnetic stimulation was used. And from the 1985, research on this field started to grow up, and more papers were published. So paradoxically, basically, both transcranial. So there are 2 main techniques. One is called the transcranial magnetic stimulation. The other one is called the transcranial electrical stimulation. But in both cases, what you want to do on the brain of the subjects that you stimulate is to produce some current because it's not the magnetic field, but it's the electrical field that goes and modulates the neuronal activity. The difference is that magnetic stimulation uses the Faraday's law, by which that says that basically if you have an electrical field, this electrical field also generates a magnetic field that is perpendicular to the direction of the electrical field. So there will be a coil on the head of your participants that you want to stimulate, and a large electrical field will pass through those wires, and a magnetic field is created, and these magnetic fields will create another electrical field on the brain of the participant, because the magnetic field can bypass easily the skull of participants. And this stimulation, the nice aspect of this stimulation is that it can be very focal, which means that it can stimulate very small areas and can be precise, especially on the brain. The other one is kind of more easy and kind of cheaper meaning that the equipment is cheap than the magnetic stimulation one. You basically have a battery-driven electrical stimulator that produces very mild currents, and you attach 2 electrodes on the head of your participant, and you let some current flowing. Okay, the current is very mild, so the participant doesn't feel any pain, of course. And this is also able to modulate the neuronal activity, because neurons, the function of neurons is by means of electricity, ultimately. And these techniques, as I said, is kind of easier, but is less focal, because the current flows from one part to the other part, and typically electrodes are larger, and there is a dispersion of the current from the surface of the head of our participants. But both of them have some pros and cons. For example, electrical stimulation is more and more used for increasing some kind of performances, like in cognitive functions, and can be also used for improving learning. Learning meaning that you can get better in any task, provided that you give the right training and you stimulate the right area, the area that basically controls that particular cognitive task. So this is the example of dyslexia, where there is one of the problems is an attentional problem. So what we do, we stimulate the parts of the brain that control visuospatial attention, while training participants with simple video games. What works better is action video games, where people need to shift their attention in different parts of the screen very quickly. And it has been shown in the past that action video games can help in improving dyslexia, so the problems in reading, people that are very slow in reading. And we have shown that by using at the same time action video games and this type of electrical stimulation can make faster the rate of learning and the improvement from this condition.
Tell me now about a psychologist or a neuroscientist who has been an inspiration for you.
Okay, I would say that probably my mentor, when I spent a few years in working in the UK, and my mentor was Professor Vincent Walsh, and he was the one who introduced me to TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. So basically, I was a PhD student, and I started to read those papers where he showed that actually you could use these techniques to probe different visual functions to see whether if you stimulate a certain part of the brain while you are doing a certain function, you can either increase or decrease performance. At that time, it was more decreasing performance. It was called virtual lesion. So you kind of lesion for a few hundred milliseconds. So you made this part of the brain less functioning, and you could see the effects on performance. And that was amazing to me. So I said, okay, I want to go to work with this guy. And I went there during my PhD, and then I applied after my PhD for a postdoc. It was I got a Marie Curie fellowship at the University of Oxford, and so I had the chance to work with him for a few years. And yeah, that was really inspiring. And nowadays I still work on this field, so I really loved that. And he was, I mean, he published really lots of paper on this field, on not just visual function, but on any aspect of brain functions by using both electrical brain stimulation and transcranial magnetic stimulation.
Tell me now about an emerging idea or a new trend in your area of research.
Okay, so in the past, non-invasive brain stimulation techniques were used mainly to try to damage temporarily a certain part of the brain and to measure the effects. So it was like mapping what this part of the brain is needed for. And this is very different. I mean, you can infer causality, whereas for with other techniques, which maybe are much more expensive, like functional magnetic resonance imaging, you can see which areas seems to be more involved in a certain task. But in that case, the relation is just correlational, which means you cannot infer causality. With TMS, you can really infer causality. So that's a great thing. So if that area does not work properly, you cannot simply be able to do a certain function. Nowadays, we have another, the trend is more, how can we use these techniques for improving visual functions? And it has been shown that typically you get faster in improving. So if you combine these techniques with a certain training, you get faster in recovering, for example, from a certain condition or in improving a certain function. I think the next step would be, okay, we don't want just to get faster. We want to get even better from what we can achieve without brain stimulation. So can we get farther? Can we get even better? So that, I think, could be the next step in the future.
Do you think we could see applications in education, in healthcare, in terms of using these stimulation techniques to improve performance, maybe in students, or to help treat conditions in the medical sphere?
Well, both techniques both transcranial magnetic and electrical stimulation are already used for improving conditions such as depression, for example, or post-traumatic stress disorder. But yeah, for other more, let's say, neurological conditions, there is still research going on. So there is not a sort of approved protocol for those conditions. So I think that more research is needed to establish which is the best protocol for any specific condition. That's another important issue.
Gianluca Campana, thank you so much for taking part in PsychPod.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.